Roger, you want to do it? Madhavi Devi, of the name Madhavi Devi, Siki Mahitira, of Siki Mahiti, Bhagini, sister, Sri Radhara, of Srimati Radharani, Dasi Madhye, amongst the maidservants, Yanra, whose, Nama, name, Gani, count. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Madhavi Devi, the 17th of the prominent devotees, was the younger sister of Siki Mahiti. She is considered to have formerly been a maidservant of Srimati Radharani. Purport. In the Adi-lila of Caitanya Caritamrita, chapter 2, verses 104 to 106, there is a description of Madhavi Devi. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu considered her to be one of the maidservants of Srimati Radharani. Within this world, Caitanya Mahaprabhu had 3.5 very confidential devotees. The 3 were Swarup Goswami, Sri Ramananda Roy, and Siki Mahiti. And Siki Mahiti's sister, Madhavi Devi, being a woman, was considered to be the half. Thus it is known that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu had 3.5 confidential devotees. Please repeat translation. Madhavi Devi, the 17th of the prominent devotees, was the younger sister of Siki Mahiti. She is considered to have formerly been a maidservant of Srimati Radharani. Mama Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lang Hayatekinim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatana. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master has very kindly come, forced open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my most respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. I offer my respectful obeisances under the lotus feet of my spiritual master, the saviour of all fallen souls. By his grace, even a lame man can cross over mountains, a blind man can see stars in the sky, and a dumb man can recite eloquent Vedic poetry. So there is one other reference to Srimati Madhavi Devi, which we came across, and we'll just read that now. And this is the reference that Srila Prabhupada is referring to here from the Adi-lila, chapter 2, verses 104 to 106. So we'll just read this particular verse, especially about Srimati Radharani. Madhavi Devi, about Madhavi Devi. Madhavi Devi, the 17th, we've got the wrong verse here. Let's just go here. Okay, right. Siki Mahiti's sister was named Madhavi Devi. She was an elderly lady who always performed austerities. She was very advanced in devotional service. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu accepted her as having formerly been an associate of Srimati Radharani. In the entire world, 3.5 people were his intimate devotees. The 3 were Swarup Damodar Goswami, Ramananda Roy, and Siki Mahiti, and the half person was Siki Mahiti's sister. So I know what everyone's thinking, and we've done research, in case you're not aware. I'm assuming here, which I should never do. But I've always wondered, and so for my own curiosity, and anticipating perhaps a question or two from the audience, when we found out this was the verse that we were to speak on this morning, What is the situation regarding Madhavi Devi being referred to as a half person? So I reached out to a number of scholarly devotees and got very wonderful responses, which satisfied me, and hopefully they'll satisfy you as well. If you're not aware, the principal reason, the main reason why Madhavi Devi is referred to here as amongst the most confidential associates, first and foremost, of Lord Gauranga, but as a half, is that it's cultural. It's following the protocols of the sannyas order, which Mahaprabhu was strictly adhering to. And because Madhavi Devi was in a lady's body, she was not able to come very near Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. She was rendering service to the Lord from a distance, as were all the other female devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They would offer their respects whenever they saw the Lord from a distance. But Mahaprabhu was enjoying his pastime as a renunciant, a sannyasi. Krishna has 6 opulences, and one of those, 1/6 of those opulences is vairagya, or renunciation. So when Krishna wants, he can be the most renounced, more renounced than any other tyagi or yogi. And he enjoys himself, and he sets a wonderful example for other renunciants, that this is the standard for especially the renounced order of life, sannyas. So for that reason, Madhavi Devi is referred to in that way. And we'll talk a little bit more about her. Specifically, she was a long-term resident along with her 2 brothers. Sikhi Mahiti is mentioned here. And there was another brother, Murari Mahiti. And actually, Murari Mahiti and Madhavi Devi, they came first of the 3 siblings and surrendered to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Sikhi Mahiti came after a little while. He also surrendered to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu after he had an extraordinary dream. Had a couple of dreams actually of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Jagannath, and they're mentioned in the preceding purport. We won't go into that now because it's already been discussed. But and in Gauraganadeshtipika, which is the who's who of Adi-lila, Madhavi Devi is described as one of Radha's friends, one of Srimati Radharani's friends, and also, as mentioned here, one of her maid servants. And her name in Goloka Vrindavan is Kalakeli. Sikha Mahiti's also in the form of a gopi in Goloka Vrindavan, and her name is Ragaleka. So that's the principal reason. Due to social etiquette, she served from a little distance. She was a wonderful cook and would often cook the Lord's favourite preparations, and then her brothers would bring those to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he would honour them. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is non-different to the Super Soul. He is Lord Paramatma in the hearts of all living entities, in the hearts of his pure devotees. So he full well knew the exalted nature of Madhavi Devi from a distance. And all of these personalities, as we discuss often as we move through this Caitanya Caritamrita and discuss all of the exalted personalities, the prominent ones have all been identified by Kavi Kanapur in his Gauraganadeshtipika. And in many, many cases, not all, but in many, many cases, these personalities who may have appeared in this world in male bodies, their original spiritual forms in Goloka are feminine. The Braja Gopikas, the assistants, either younger, sometimes considerably younger, very young girls, or a little older or a little older again, around the age of Srimati Radharani. And of course we know that, as is mentioned, these four we can refer to Swarup Damodar also, and Ramananda Roy, Lalita and Vishaka gopis. And so all four personalities are in the Madhurya Rasa, in their original spiritual forms. So, and of course, in modern context, we have an expression: an affectionate husband will refer to his wife as my better half. Sometimes wives will also refer to their partners in that way, but it's very well known. I better ask my better half. And I did get another explanation of this verse. This comes from Dhruta Karma Prabhu in a class he gave in Mayapur a little while back. And I'm grateful to Krishna Rupa, Devi Dasi, who's not here this morning, but I reached out to her to get her perspective on this particular aspect of theology, and she remembered hearing a class by Dhruta Karma Prabhu in Mayapur when a lady did ask this question: what about the half? So Dhruta Karma Prabhu responded by saying, a half of infinity is still infinity. I'll let everyone think about that for a moment. So there was no purport to that, so I've been meditating with my tiny brain on what that could mean. A half of infinity is still infinity. So I could only deduce that Madhavi Devi is a liberated soul. She's a Jiva Mukta. She's come along with Caitanya Mahaprabhu, it's Krishna, in the mood of Sri Radha, to this material world, along with countless other liberated souls, to assist the Lord in his pastimes. So she's perfect. She's infinitely perfect. So I hope that is a little clearer for all of us. Just want to look through my copious notes here to make sure I'm not missing anything on this particular point before we move on. We will mention there's a couple of other pastimes of the Lord. Also, it's interesting, Sikhi Mahiti, the two brothers and sister long-term residents, as we mentioned, of Jagannath Puri, and it seems that Sikhi Mahiti had quite an important role in the management of the Jagannath Temple. He had a secretarial position there. And as also mentioned in the other verses from the Adi-lila, Madhavi Devi appears to be elderly, and she was very fond of performing austerities. So that endeared her very much to Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who was himself living very austerely as a sannyasi, the last 18 years of his life residing in Puri. 6 years before that, travelling widely throughout the subcontinent of India, spreading the Yuga Dhamma, Harinam Sankirtan. But for those last 18 years, Mahaprabhu was there. So he was very much affectionate from a distance to Madhavi Devi. So there's, of course, other interesting pastimes which we can draw very valuable spiritual lessons from. Mahaprabhu had two other associates in Puri, Damodar Pandit and Jagadananda Pandit. And they were also, in their spiritual forms, maidservants, either a maidservant of Srimati Radharani in Goloka Vrindavan, as a gopi, Damodar Pandit, a somewhat hot-tempered gopi, and if I get this right, Jagadananda Pandit is the incarnation of Satyabhama. one of Krishna's principal queens in Dwarka. And she was a little bossy also. So these two personalities, and another thing to recall is that when many of these confidential associates of their lordships Radha and Krishna in Goloka appear in this world, along with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they came in male forms in order to preach very powerfully the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Not that they weren't also very powerful acharyas like Janavamata, the consort of Lord Nityananda Prabhu, who also preached very boldly. And I think the niece of Srinivasacharya also accepted disciples, and Ganga Mata Goswamini, and there are others also. But so these two personalities, Jagadananda Pandit and Damodar Pandit, had their relationship with Mahaprabhu was that they would sometimes instruct the Lord because they were very protective of him. And Mahaprabhu was quite often in such devotional ecstasy that he completely was detached from the affairs of this mundane realm. So they were very protective of him, always concerned for his welfare, as were all the devotees in Puri. But sometimes they would instruct him. And there was one incident where a young Brahmani widow was allowing her son, her boy, to come daily to meet with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And she was off in the distance, but her son would come every day, and he became very attached to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he would offer obeisances to the Lord, and Mahaprabhu would spend some time with the boy and give him nice instructions in Krishna consciousness. But this was intolerable for Damodar Pandit. And he told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I cannot tolerate this. And he actually used to send the boy away. If he saw the boy coming, he would very abruptly disallow the boy to come into Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's association. But the boy was very clever, like most boys, and he managed to sneak in. So so this was causing great frustration to Damodar Pandit. And he told the Lord that by no fault of her own, this young Brahmani has lost her husband. She's a widow. And she's very young and she's very beautiful. And you, my Lord, are a very handsome young man. So people are going to gossip. And I can't stand this. So that was the end of that. Mahaprabhu took that advice on board. And we always wonder how these things ended up. Perhaps the boy grew into manhood and became one of the constant associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was older. So the other instructive pastime is to show how merciful Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, simultaneously strict like a thunderbolt, but soft like rose petals. Was the incident when the Lord, as was his daily activity, pastime, would go and have darshan of Lord Jagannath, Balaram and Subhadra, in the temple. And there would always be hundreds, if not thousands, of devotees in the temple. So his two godbrothers would accompany him, Kashishvara Pandit and Govinda. And Kashishvara Pandit, being of large, stout bodily frame, he would part the crowds, and Mahaprabhu would have darshan of Lord Jagannath to his heart's content. And on one occasion, an Arisan lady climbed up the Garuda Stamba to get a better view of Lord Jagannath. And whilst doing that, she put her foot on Lord Chaitanya's shoulder. And when Govinda saw that, he severely chastised this lady. But Mahaprabhu allowed this lady to use his shoulder to climb the Garuda Stamba to get a better view of Lord Jagannath. And he chastised Govinda. He referred to him as an uncivilized man, uncultured fellow. If I had the same amount of attachment and devotion to Lord Jagannath as this lady has. And Mahaprabhu actually asked the lady, please bless me with the same amount of devotion to see Lord Jagannath as you have. So that pastime is there as well. So, and of course we know on a spiritual level the jiva is prakriti, or to be enjoyed, feminine by nature. Krishna is the supreme Purusha, Parama Purusha. And we are really happy when we link up with the Supreme Lord and render devotional service. That is the bliss that the soul is hankering for. A few classes back, Ramai Maharaj quoted one of my all-time favourite Bhagavad Gita verses. And it is Matchita Matkata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam Katayantas Chaman Nityam Tuschanti Cha Ramanti Cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are surrendered to me, and they derive great bliss and satisfaction, enlightening one another and conversing about me. So this is what the jiva is looking, this is what everyone's looking for, is great bliss and satisfaction. And of course we don't find it in this realm, which is a temporary place where the happiness is very fleeting at best. So it's a wonderful instruction Krishna gives to Arjuna regarding the association of devotees, how we come together and we attempt to enlighten one another and converse about Krishna. That is the essence of bhakti. And Srila Prabhupada initiated a number of disciples and gave them the names either Tusta Krishna Das or Pusta Krishna Das, and one of his spiritual daughters he gave the name Pushti Devi Dasi. So I was intrigued, what does Pushta and Tushta mean? So I looked up, and in Sanskrit they have very similar meanings. Tushta, contented, pleased, gratified. And Pushta, nourished, cherished, thriving, strong, rich, amply provided for, complete. Nice Sanskrit words. And of course that refers to the Supreme Lord, who is all of those. And his devotees also, when linked up in Bhakti Yoga, we can also relish those wonderful qualities. So, and one of my favourite quotes of Srila Prabhupada is, we want this certificate from Krishna. This man, woman, has done something for me. We may acquire other certificates in this world. We may frame them up and put them on our home office walls, but we can't take those certificates with us at the end of this lifetime. They stay behind. But the certificate that we've done something for Krishna, that goes with us to the next lifetime, which is really wonderful. And someone may do spectacular devotional service for many decades throughout one's lifetime, or one may plod along in devotional service, just faithfully chanting their 16 rounds, following regulative principles and rendering whatever service they can. Another famous quote of Srila Prabhupada's is, don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised who stays. And Prabhupada immediately qualified that by saying, after all, this is the Maya's kingdom. And the predominating energy in this material realm is directed towards sense gratification. So that's the overwhelming atmosphere, just as you visit different countries, different places, and every country has its laws. And there are cosmic laws, which of course determine how the living entities are being forced by the influence of the three modes of material nature to act in certain ways. And that is throughout the Ekapad Vibhuti, or the one fraction of Krishna's total creation, which are the material universes, as opposed to the Tripad Vibhuti, the three quarters, which is the spiritual realm, Vaikuntha, the Vaikuntha planets in Goloka Vrindavan. So we have different cultures on our planet. Most of us have grown up in Western culture. We don't need to say too much about that because we all know it very well. The predominating impetus is towards economic development and sense gratification. A little bit of religiosity is still there, a little bit of dharma, but mostly it's artha and karma. And then at the end of life, perhaps some people become a little introspective and philosophical. Many don't. So there's not much trending towards moksha or mukti or liberation of the soul from the perpetual cycle of birth and death. Sometimes in the early days, some of us would incorrectly refer to as the Guru Vastikam prayers as the samsara prayers. But that's not correct, because samsara means the cycle of birth and death. So we weren't singing the cycle of birth and death prayers, we're actually singing Guru Vastikam, or the 8 beautiful prayers composed in glorification of our spiritual masters. And of course, the first of those is Samsara Dava Nala Lida Loka. And we can say a little bit about the torrential rainfall that's continuing to fall. And the Guru, our spiritual masters, it's described there that they are receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as clouds originate from the ocean, evaporation of moisture, spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a rain cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master extinguishes the blazing fire of material existence. And Prabhupada very wonderfully in many lectures and his books, he describes how in a forest nobody wants a fire, but fires happen in forests, and the first creatures to be devoured are the snakes. They can't run away very quickly. And quite often that forest fire originates in the dry season by the rubbing of dry bamboo or other trees together, produces some sparks, and from that forest fires, or it can be a lightning strike. So, of course, when rain like today, if there was a forest fire anywhere, it would be quickly extinguished. So that is the mercy of our Guru Devs, that they come into this world and they share Krishna consciousness with the fallen conditioned souls to uplift them. And of course, those who have become tired of life in this material world, they're extremely grateful. They remain ever grateful. They never lose their gratitude to their Guru Devs for delivering them. So it's interesting. Srila Prabhupada gave many wonderful names to his disciples. Another name which has always fascinated me, we have one God sister. I think she's still with us in this realm. And she first met the devotees in San Francisco in the late 60s, but she was very young then, still at high school. But then when she graduated, she moved to New York City, and in the early 70s, she met up with the devotees again and actually joined the New York Temple And she was initiated by Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was there in New York at her initiation, and amongst other devotees. And when Prabhupada mentioned her name, there was a little bit of a gasp from the audience. He said, when she came up, he said, "Your name is Mahamaya Devi Dasi." The devotees went, "Hare Krishna. What sort of name has Prabhupada given this lady?" And Prabhupada, sensing and not being afraid to create a little controversy, when he heard the devotees gasp, he said, "Don't think what you're thinking. Mahamaya is a great Vaishnava. She's a great devotee, consort of Lord Shiva, the greatest devotee, Vaishnavanam Jata Sambhu." So, and she has her service, and she's very expert at that service, and that is, of course, testing the sincerity, the resolve, determination of the jiva to go back to Krishna, so that no unqualified persons can somehow or other enter into the Lord's abode. So that is her, you could say, thankless task, but she's very good at it. So Mahamaya Devi Dasi, just like in a prison, everyone who's been incarcerated in a prison, they have, of course, different sections of a prison. There are first class, second class, third class prisoners. You could say there's low security, medium security, and high security. And someone who's in maximum security prison might think, let me try and go to the low security prison. It'll be better there, but you're still in prison. So similarly, the jiva in this realm, of course, people can be released early for good behavior. It could be a model prisoner, get out a little bit earlier. But ultimately, to get out of the prison, it's only the superintendent of prisoners or the president of the country, the prime minister of the country, if he or she comes and gives the final decree, release this person, then one can be let out of the prison. So that is the business of gurus and Vaishnavas. They're very merciful. They come into this world and they preach Krishna's glories, and in this way, those who are spiritually inclined, spiritual seekers, enjoy the association of their Gurudevs and the Vaishnavas, and go back to home, back to Godhead. So I have a little bit more here, everyone, but I'm thinking with this heavy rain, I might just finish a little early this morning, Ramai Maharaj, and yeah, because we know the waters can come up pretty quickly. And we have some guests here. Thank you for coming on such a wet day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Krishna. But does anyone have a quick question or comment, Maharaj? Rupa Raghunath's got his hand up. You might have to come in, Rupa, so we can all hear. I don't know if there's a microphone set up, but I'll repeat the question or comment.
Thanks for your last class, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
You were talking about the glories of Madhavi Devi and Janardhan Mata, and within ISKCON, so many wonderful devotees with female bodies, and you were mentioning that many men refer their wife as the better half, and even devotees could say that Radharani is the better half of Krishna, because without the mercy of Radharani we cannot understand or know Krishna. And so, like it also says in the Bible, that man is made in the image of God, so we understand the female form is made in the image of the original mother, Srimati Radharani. is there understanding in other Vedic lineages, the other sampradayas or other religions around the world of the female aspect of God, the original mother?
I'm sure there is. I'm not an expert. I'm struggling to keep up with Gaudiya Vaishnava theology, and but I'm sure, yes. I mean, I think in Christianity the Virgin Mother, the Mother of Christ, that concept is there. But and in most cultures, yes, there is understanding of Mother Earth, and of course in Indian culture, the greater Indian culture, Lakshmi Devi is there, the consort of Lord Narayan, and her innumerable expansions. So yes, and in other, but as I say, Prabhu, I'm not expert on comparative religion, but I hope that's something. Ramai Maharaj, feel free to jump in if you want to add anything else, or if there is anything else. Hare Krishna. You're smiling, Braj, that's a good sign. Okay. All right, you want the microphone? Yeah, you can have. All right.
Some people from Bodhisattva, sometimes when they read something about Caitanya and Caritamrita, for example, 14 people who are actually a gopi, or they are actually they had a double personality, one like a follower of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, another one with Krishna. So they say, who are the authority? Like, for example, when they read the Bhagavatam, you see everything quoted there, the great sage and Sukadeva Goswami said that. But when it comes to Caitanya Caritamrita, who is deciding who the incarnation of who? Is that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami who has these illuminations, or?
Some acharyas, yes, do give their illuminations, but Kavi Karnapur is the one, and he's written a book, and you can easily find it online. It's called Gaura Ganadesh Deepika, and he was the third son of Shivananda Sain, and he's written a number of books. He has the honorific title Kavi Karnapur. He's the third son of Shivananda Sain, and he's a great author of Gaudiya Vaishnava literatures. And if I'm not mistaken, Maharaj, I think he also wrote the Radha Krishna Ganadesh Deepika. So he, through his own purity and intuition, could understand who's who. But that said, Caitanya Mahaprabhu also identified amongst his immediate associates who was who. For example, Murari Gupta. Lord Chaitanya told Murari Gupta, "You are the incarnation of Hanuman." So in that way, Caitanya Mahaprabhu identified some of his confidential associates, and Kavi Karnapur identified many. I think there's close to 200 in the Gaura Ganadesh Deepika, because and each one has a number. For example, and it may be, anyway, I was doing a lot of reading yesterday. So quite often, yeah, so-and-so is mentioned as the 179th person. So that's a good reference to go to. You can, Gaura Ganadesh Deepika, Kavi Karnapur. Thank you, Raja. All right, we might finish there, everyone. Jai Sri Caitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanandi.